Hey everyone, Gill Gross here. Let's talk about players slipping at Wimbledon. It was a tough day at the All England Club, especially on center court. Adrian Mannarino was up 2-1 on Roger Federer before slipping, injuring his knee, and having to retire in that match. Next on was Serena Williams against Alexandra Sasnovich. And Serena also endured slight slippage of the foot, which led to her ankle doing something funky. And Serena, at the age that she is, going for her 24th slam at the major where it's most likely to happen, also had to retire from her first round match. She's never lost before the third round at Wimbledon. So obviously everyone is feeling a certain type of way right now. And this comes not suddenly, but after day one and midway through day two, there were people already discussing the slippery grass at Wimbledon 2021. I want to start off by saying I do think that the groundskeepers and the All England Club do need to look into this and search for solutions. But before I get into that conversation, let's talk about context, why this happens, and grass courts in general. Some of this insight does come from Jason Goodall, who is a commentator for ESPN, but most importantly, is a member at the All England Club. There are a lot of people offering their opinions about the grass courts, and I choose to listen to Jason Goodall's opinions over everyone else's because he is literally a member at the club. He plays there all year round, and he's also well-sourced and well-connected with the players. So the first thing to note, and this might be somewhat hard to accept, but it needs to be accepted, is that this is not a new thing. 2013 was a notorious year for players slipping at Wimbledon. 2017 was a notorious year for players slipping at Wimbledon. Not only does it differ based on the year, but it also differs based on sometimes the day. Sometimes you will have a day at Wimbledon where it rains all night, rains in the morning, cloud cover in the day, which just doesn't sufficiently dry out the courts. And it would almost always happen early in the tournament, first couple days, and you can have a day where the grass is just slippery. This is not new. Has it ever struck the tournament at a profile that reaches the level of Serena Williams? I'm not sure, but I can assure you that nothing is happening in the first 2 days of this year's Wimbledon that has never happened before. These are things that have happened before historically. With that being said, there are some things that perhaps could make this tournament a little bit unique and could be making the grass extra slippery, more slippery than usual. First of all, there was a wet spring in the United Kingdom, lots of rain, and the club members were not being able to play on these courts as much. So the courts might be less played on. However, that should not affect center court or court one. Why? Because you're never allowed to play on center court and court one, even if you're a member at the All England Club. So the thing with those two courts is that they weren't played on at all in 2020. So they did not get that beating that they should get, that they usually get, with a lot of the grass dying, having to be regrown, the court getting stepped on and chewed up and dried out. That didn't happen in 2020. So it could be an extra lush piece of grass because it's 2 years untouched here in 2021. There is more moisture when the roof is closed, something to keep in mind for the day one matches. We saw Novak have issues with this. The roof, I'm pretty sure, was open today, but that's another thing to keep in mind. The players being rusty, moving on the grass, maybe that's a factor for 2020, but I'm not quite sure about that one. Lastly, just the moist weather that has been occurring this week, early on in this week. Tons of rain, and that is probably the main culprit. It is probably the main reason we are seeing a lot of slippage. The rain combined with the fact that it's just the first couple days of the tournament, and those are the most slippery days. So those are kind of I'd say, the information nuggets that come into this. And what needs to be done in the short term is the players need to seriously adjust. Now, I don't think Serena could have done anything. I think it was just a freak incident. But I think in this case of some of the players who are slipping, they do need to make adjustments with their movement. They need to take smaller adjustment steps, and they need to never move at 100%. You can never rely on 100% traction. You can never dig your foot into the ground when you're changing direction and do so with 100% force, or you are going to slip. And there are some players who do this just better than others, and Federer is really the model here. The way that he never really digs his foot in with, there's never one step that he's really relying on tons of traction on the grass. It's just the way that he moves. And a lot of players are going to need to be very mindful of that, and they need to think about the way they're moving, and they need to try to adjust, although it's very hard in the heat of the moment when you're playing a match. These are things that you really shouldn't be thinking about. Movement should be natural. It should be in the subconscious. So it'll be interesting to see if some players do make that adjustment, like Novak Djokovic alluded to at the end of his first round match, saying, well, certainly I need to think about changing the way I move. Novak is a special case. His ankles are so strong that it's really hard for Novak to get injured. And I think I've seen him slip and fall all the time, but his ankles are so strong that it's difficult, I think, for him to sprain his ankle or roll his ankle. That doesn't happen because his ankles are made of steel. He's kind of a special case. That's neither here nor there. The second thing is that Wimbledon needs to take a look at this because, you cannot have a dangerous playing surface. This is not something that should be accepted. I think that they need to look into perhaps players playing on the courts before the tournament so that the courts are played on. I think they need to look at how they are covering up the courts when it rains in the lead up. So, to minimize ways to possibly minimize moisture. I'm not an expert on that. I don't know if that's possible or if it can be done. But I do know that they take measures. Wimbledon takes measures such as the qualifying rounds not being played on the courts. And I don't know if that's a mistake. Maybe we should not make it so that the first couple days, these courts are so perfect and unplayed on, when we could be protecting the players in other ways. Sacrificing the aesthetic, because the court is really beautiful in the first couple days of the championships when you have absolutely no wear and tear on the grass. But clearly, I think players' health is more important, and I think the experts need to look into their processes and think about ways to keep the moisture off the court and ways to make it so that the court plays more like it does maybe the second week of the tournament throughout the championships, if that is possible. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's not, and we need to accept the way this is. But certainly we don't want this issue, and if there's anything that can be done, we should do it. In addition, the players need to adjust, especially for this year's championships, when the conditions of the courts, they will change in a couple of days. They will get very, they'll stop being slippery in a couple of days. I hear there's sunshine in the forecast for week 2. It is going to completely change the way the courts play. But for now, the players need to be mindful of how they're moving on the grass. Hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you next time.